My name is Catherine Breckell. I'm Deputy Head Teacher at Kesgrove High School in Ipswich, Suffolk. Although this is the sixth school I've worked in, I've been at this school and in this role for the last 14 years. In this short presentation, I firstly intend to reflect on my own enterprising potential, considering the scores and traits that have resulted from my Get2 test, PECs and mindset tools. The second part of my presentation will focus on the entrepreneurial role that I feel I can play in my organisation. So firstly, my self-reflection on the Get2 test. The general measure of enterprising tendency was a test developed in the late 1980s by Dr. Sally Caird and Mr. Cliff Johnson at Durham University Business School. The basic premise of this test is that enterprising people will share entrepreneurial characteristics. And these key entrepreneurial characteristics were identified as having strong motivation. This would be characterised by a high need for achievement, autonomy, creative tendency, calculated risk-taking, and an internal locus of control. So the belief you have control over your own destiny and make your own luck. So having taken the test myself, my overall scores suggest that I am occasionally enterprising with an overall test score of 76%. My report goes on to say that I am content to work on a limited number of projects and may be happy to be enterprising either within employment, as an intrapreneur, or in my leisure time through voluntary or community projects. That 76% is broken down into the different characteristics as follows. So my lowest scores according to this test are in the areas of achievement and creative tendency. This initially surprised me, as ambition and creativity are traits that I believe I've shown in my role as deputy at the school over the last decade and more. But reflecting on this, I would agree that I don't always take the creative genius role nowadays. It doesn't have to be me that comes up with the idea. But it is crucial in my position that I enable others to bring their ideas forward. I need to listen and react appropriately to them, to identify realistic, sustainable opportunities to improve what we need to do to meet our goals as an institution. As I reflected on this, I'm not sure that this set of scores would have been the same if I'd taken this test a decade ago, or even a few years into the future. Reflecting on my responses as I did the test, I was aware of the impact of my context as it's evolved and developed over time. In 2007, when I first started in this role, there was much change to make, much innovation to be done. I was appointed alongside a new head teacher, and we did much together that was creative and enterprising. We bid for money to build new, exciting and innovative school buildings, facilities. We reshaped the curriculum to better serve our students. We built new partnerships with other schools and colleges locally to create dynamic teams to support initial teacher training, even developing our own skit, training our own teachers, homegrown talent to secure the very best teachers for our institution. But 14 years on, am I still as creative? Do I still spot opportunities for innovation and enterprise? According to the Get2 test results that I got, my highest scores can be found in the traits of autonomy, risk-taking and control. And I suppose I do recognise those aspects in myself. I think I have drive and confidence and influence to make things happen. But I often also tell staff that part of the role of senior managers is to protect our school from onslaught of political interference and change that might be inappropriate. The education sector in the UK is often subject to much change and new initiative that isn't necessarily educationally driven. Sometimes there is a political agenda. So scoring highly and having an internal locus of control would be consistent with the idea that I want to navigate problems, achieve success but on my own terms. Take advantage of opportunities, yes, but also seek control over my life and that of the school. Moving on to the Entrecomp skills audit. There are 3 competence areas, and each of these are broken down into 15 competencies, so 5 in each area. It isn't a hierarchical model. No one competency outweighs any other. Everything is intertwined and interconnected, so the model should be seen as a whole. So as I looked at each competence and reflected on where I might rate my current ability with each, I was mindful that the higher scores I gave myself tended to be in the resources and into action sections. Gathering resources, planning implementation strategy, getting people alongside to turn ideas into action. These seemed to be my strengths. I could recognise them, I could find examples of them in my working life. I was less confident in giving myself high scores in the areas of idea and opportunity, which does seem to marry up with the results of the Get2 test in terms of relative strength and weakness. And although, again, I don't think the results are fixed in time, and I do think they might be different if I did the test later or at an earlier point in my career, I did wonder if my self-reflection and self-assessment has been influenced by the fact that I did that Get2 test first. It's hard to be sure of the validity and accuracy of tests and results when self-assessed in this way, and perhaps when influenced by the order. However, moving on to mindset finally, this is an area I've read much about. I've led staff training on it in schools, I've led student assemblies. I even try and use it in the parenting of my own two small children. But evaluating myself in terms of mindset was very interesting. Dr. Carol Dweck first coined the terms fixed mindset, growth mindset to describe an underlying belief that some people have about learning and intelligence. Students believing that they can get smarter, understanding that effort makes them stronger. So they put in that time and effort, it leads to higher achievement. And I believe that on the whole, I do have a growth mindset. I've invested quite a lot of time and energy into purposeful practice and effort to improve in certain areas of my work. Indeed, teaching as a profession makes it very clear to us in its demonstration that experience and reflective practice does lead to improved competence in the classroom. But learning skills in management has been interesting too. I do believe that some abilities can be developed, but I know I have some mental blocks too when it comes to certain aspects of my role where I feel I have less control over developing my ability. The financial analysis module we completed at Easter this year for this qualification was of particular interest to me. I had long believed I wasn't as able in this field of management as others. And I surprised myself in some ways as I undertook that module because I was aware that my mindset was as much of a problem as the actual material we're trying to understand. I could feel myself feeling that panic and confusion as concepts seemed sort of initially beyond my grasp. But I did get better at it. And I have seen the benefits of that effort in our recent budget setting meetings at work. But certainly I was more resistant to the idea that I would improve my competence from the outset of that module. So this is something I think I need to work on and maintain a self-awareness of. So as I think about how I can have an entrepreneurial role in my organisation, I find it interesting to reflect that as the COVID-19 situation unravelled education as we know it, it has forced me to be creative in my leadership once more. I had to set up a testing centre for 2,000 people. I've had to reimagine the curriculum in the spaces that we have to deliver our education, whether they be virtual or in our buildings. It had to still be inspiring, but still be COVID safe. So key aspects of my role are leading personnel and curriculum. So I've had to find ways of deploying staff, ways to connect with parents and the community, do the normal things we've had to do in the course of a school year, like put on open days and options evenings and parents evenings. And I think that's enabled me and the school also to prove ourselves to be more nimble than perhaps we thought. And we've changed things quite radically at Kesgrove. So perhaps Kesgrove isn't such a super tanker, and perhaps I am not as uncreative as perhaps I had thought or was suggested by some of those tests. Staff are already out of their comfort zone, and so am I, quite literally. So it's easier to make change, it's easier to get people to look at what we do more critically, question our approach and the things that we do. It shouldn't take a crisis, it shouldn't take an external driver. And one of the challenges for me as I reflect on this unit and the work that we've done is remembering to continue to spot opportunity, to keep that open mindset, to be prepared to challenge and accept challenge of what we're doing in order to strive forward. So I think that my role at Kesgrave has got to be to enable others and to champion innovation in its all and many and unexpected forms. My entrepreneurial strengths, as identified by the various tests and measures we've been asked to reflect upon in this task, seems to be in the areas of turning ideas into action, designing implementation plans that manage resources effectively, and having the self-determination and self-efficacy to see through initiatives.